Love staying informed? Subscribe now and get unlimited access to local news, weather, and sports for just 99 cents a month for your first 3 months at inforum.news/join. Read every story, listen to every podcast, and download the apps that keep you informed and on the go 24 hours a day. So head to inforum.news/join right now to subscribe. What are you waiting for? Get 3 months of local news for just 99 cents a month at inforum.news/join.
Welcome to Plain Talk. Happy to be with you. And, on Monday we had a wrap-up of a very, I would say contentious. I think contentious is an appropriate word for it. Very competitive anti-GOP state convention. And one of the areas where we saw the most action for sure was the United States House race. And the person who emerged from that convention with the convention endorsement is somebody who I think a lot of North Dakotans haven't heard of before and don't know a lot about. And we're going to seek to correct that today. Alex Balazs, who's from Candu, North Dakota, who is a newcomer, I think it's fair to say, to North Dakota politics, politics in general, I think, is joining us. Ben Hansen, my co-host today. Alex, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having us on.
I don't want to say this. Were you surprised to get the endorsement at the convention? And I say that not meaning, I mean, obviously you were there to win, you were there to introduce yourself and everything. You were also up against some pretty well-known people, or at least one other. I mean, it's a little bit of an odd situation with former lawmaker Rick Becker, who wasn't allowed to seek it. But I mean, Julie Fedorchak's, been on the statewide, ballot several times. She's a very well-known figure in North Dakota. Were you surprised to emerge from that competition with the endorsement?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's okay to say that. I was also very humbled, and that kind of support just really hits your heart. So sure. Yeah, I was working hard for it, but anything like that, when you see that many people come together, just really is a big deal.
Alex, no offense to you, but like Rob said, I feel like there's a lot of folks in North Dakota, and including those who follow the news very closely, that might not know you real well. So we did want to give an opportunity for you to give at least a bit of background. But I wanted to know, when was it that you decided to run for Congress? It's a process, but there has to be a moment or a time where either someone else suggested to you or you thought to yourself, I need to run for federal office, which is no small thing. And I'd like to hear when that moment was for you. What spurred it?
That is, yeah, we talk a lot about that, me and Cindy. So we've always been talking about we should be more involved and we should do more stuff, but never, this. In February, and I know that's kind of late, we were sitting in the kitchen listening to all the stuff going on. I think we heard another thing come out of the administration, and we were just frustrated with it.
The Biden administration.
Yeah, the Biden administration. And, Cindy said, well, I'm thinking about going to the delegates meeting down here. She had heard about it in Devil's Lake, and I might want to go be a delegate at the convention. I said, that's a great idea. I thought about it for a little while longer, and I said, well, if you're going as a delegate, then I'm going to go run for Congress. So at the kitchen table there, that day is when we decided. But I can tell you, it built up a long time before that. I mean, if somebody asked me this yesterday, I'll tell you what, the frustration I felt after the way the Biden administration mishandled Kabul and depth of those, that just stuck with me the whole time. And we're very comfortable, very fortunate, but we decided that day we had to do something about it.
I'm sorry, mishandled. Which was that again? I didn't quite catch it.
How he mishandled the evacuation from Kabul and shutting down Afghanistan and the deaths of those soldiers, which was a travesty. We just said, we got to get involved.
Alex, tell us a little bit. I mean, right now we're looking at a Republican Party that in many ways is divided. And really, I think that was one of the messages that we came out of the convention with. And a lot of that divide, I think, is between, at least as I perceive it, more traditional Republicans and sort of a new wave of Trump-style populist Republicans. How would you describe yourself? Now, I perceive you as maybe being in the Trump camp, but maybe I'm wrong. So where are you on this? Are you a Trump fan? I mean, is he somebody? He's somebody. And in addition to that, I think a couple of key questions is: do you feel like Trump won the 2020 election? How do you feel about that?
So let's take it one at a time. So, yeah, I guess you could call me a Trump Republican, but let's be clear about it. I'm the first one in the kitchen to say, why did he have to say that after all the good policies and all the wonderful stuff? So there are times when I think that he could be more Reagan-esque. Yeah, and I'd love to have that kind of leader. But the reality with his policies and getting America on the right track, I don't think anybody can question how well that went. Just to go back at 1 second, so one of the reasons I got in so late is because I really didn't understand politics, and it was a big process. I was behind on that. With regard to the last part of that question, let me see if I'm getting to it. What were you asking about? Whether I'm a Trump guy and what else?
The 2020 election.
2020 election. Do you think? I mean, did Trump win or was it stolen?
Well, this is my obviously the process that we went through as a government put Biden in office. And if we as a country can't have a smooth transition, then we're nothing. But there is an issue and always will be an issue with fraudulent votes in that election. And I am sure in some other elections. But I do believe, and you will hear me talk to Democrats about this. If I ever do, I'll say to them, will you not even give me one fraudulent vote? You're going to say that not even one bad vote happened in that election. And they stand on it and they say, no, it was perfect. And that's the point where we just disagree. I think we all know that there's a process they could have gone through to check those votes. They decided not to, and that caused a lot of people a lot of bad feelings.
Do you feel like, and I'm sorry to drill down on this, but I really want to make it clear. Okay. I mean, when Donald Trump, was standing on stage at a rally and saying, the people in jail who have been tried and convicted for actions on January 6th, they're in jail, and he calls them unbelievable patriots. Do you agree with that sort of a sentiment?
So there's two groups of people that were there that day. First of all, there's no insurrection because they didn't charge anybody with insurrection. I mean, we're a rule of law nation, and if you want to call it insurrection, you got to charge them. And then there's a whole group of people that just walked into the Capitol, expressed their opinion, walked around the Capitol, didn't do anything at all. No one, and I'm certainly never going to support anybody who broke a window, attacked anybody, whatever. And we know that's a really small group. So let's drill down even further. Should those people in jail get a fair and timely trial? Yes. A lot of them are being held, and it's inappropriate without any kind of charge like that. Maybe they walk down there when I give them trespassing and they're still in jail. If you really want to get justice, the people that broke a window, they pay a fine, they get whatever, or if they hurt somebody, they get that. But we're not doing that. We're taking a whole bunch of people, a whole broad brush, and still searching for people that walked onto the Capitol, which the people own. And they walked on the Capitol, I get it, but they didn't break a window. They didn't hit anybody. So I think we as Americans know that what's wrong, that what happened afterwards.
Alex, am I wrong? I was trying to find a website for you. I found a Facebook page, and the first one was on March 31st. Do you have a website? Are you still kind of in the process of setting up a little bit of the campaign? I didn't really look for a donation site, but I don't know if there is one for you yet.
Yeah, we're all set up. Actually, on March 28th, on my birthday, we actually got everything up and running. It was a day before, but you got to test everything, right? So there's a website. It's alex@northdakota.com, I think. I'll get it exactly right, and I'll make sure you have it. And then there's the alexfornorthdakota.com. It's a donation site and a website, and we're on Facebook. I'm not very good at it, to be honest, first time, but everything's up and running. Yep.
Yeah,
I don't think we need more congressmen who spend more time on social media, so that might be okay.
Yeah, you're telling me you're not good at social media. I kind of like that. We maybe have enough of that. One thing that I was really kind of surprised at. I mean, I having covered politics in North Dakota for more than 2 decades now, I've seen a lot of people, jump in, jump into a race and they're first timers. And I mean, I want to say, first of all, I think it's great. I mean, we have a process. It's open for a reason. Competition's a good thing. I was surprised that, and the it was a really good video that you put out, like high production value. You have, if I could compliment your staff, you've got some professionals around you. I know that sort of thing costs money. We haven't seen any, financial reports yet. I'm guessing you filed a April quarterly, which we should be getting. I'm assuming in the days coming up here. But where are you getting your money from? I mean, are you self-funding? Have you received a lot of donations? What does that look like?
Yeah, this is a great time to pitch for donations. So I have a whopping, and I'm proud to say, $2,035 in donations so far. Thank you to everybody out there. And everything else is self-funded. So I sat down with Cindy at the kitchen after she gave me my allowance for the week. And I said, look, if we're getting into this, it's going to cost a lot of money. And so we didn't fund anywhere near the level of anybody else, but we paid for our piece at the convention there, and we paid for our gas and our signage and the rest of the stuff and pens. And we're going to do that until people, I guess, get to know me and donate. So yes. And we're really careful with the FEC thing. We're filing everything and submitting. So you should see that. We've already done that filing. So you should see that.
Alex, you're in a busy Republican primary come June. Now, you'll have a Democratic opponent come November, but let's never mind that right now, because you'd have from June to November to address them. Although I do think it'd be interesting if you ran against Trygve Hammer, because you both have very strong military backgrounds, and I'd be interested to see. I just think that race would be interesting. But what makes you a better Republican nominee for Congress than Julie Fedorchak or Rick Becker or Cara Mund, for that matter? You have there's a fifth opponent. I can't remember her name.
Charlotte Moore.
Right. What makes you the better candidate? What's the contrast between them? And you're the endorsee of the Republican Party. Have you had any conversations with Sandy Sanford or Republican Party folks about supporting you structurally, financially in the June primary? Because frankly, Rick Becker has $800,000 according to him. Julie Fedorchak, I'm sure, has something in the six-figure range. You've just said you do not. So therefore, in order to win, in my mind, you're going to need some party backing in order to financially compete. So what makes you the better candidate? And then what's your relationship like with the Republican Party's infrastructure?
Yeah, I couldn't be more pleased. I mean, I talked to Sanford when I went down to Bismarck to file my paperwork. They were fantastic. I learned a lot about what they can do for us, and they really do help you a lot. I have some phone calls to make to the other people in the RNC and congratulate them and thank them for their support. And I'm going to be doing that. And my apologies for not getting to that. Yeah, I think there's a lot of support that I can gain there. The big piece is getting the endorsement and anything else that, and I'm still learning a lot of it about what else they can do, but they've said they're going to support it. And, I think it's going to help a lot. Why do I think I'm the better candidate? So, I answered this from day one. People would call me on the phone and say, why are you even doing this or whatever? So here's the deal. I think that, it takes a lot of experience to be in any kind of politics, but there's different experience at state level and federal level. And I think that you can have a ton of experience and you can go the route and hone some local offices or state level offices, but it's not going to get you ready for what happens in Washington, D.C. That's just how I feel about it. And we're going to have these discussions over the next few months. So my time in the military, my time with the federal government, I think prepares me for that. I know the system and how it doesn't work and how it does work back there. I think I'm going to snap in. I'm ready for it a lot faster. We don't have time on November 7th to spend a year getting used to Washington or understanding that. And I'm not saying they couldn't do the job, another candidate, go back and learn it, but you've got to be ready right now to turn this ship. And if Trump's going to get in office and do all these things that they say we need to do and turn the ship and change things and drain the swamp, if you want to call it that, but we've got to actually do legislation. We've got to get things done, and you got to be ready on day one.
You have mentioned, obviously, your military record a lot. I mean, it's a big part of your resume and certainly a big part of you promoting yourself to the voters. So what can you tell us about that? And can you verify some of this? Because, for instance, like a Rick Becker, he served in the legislature. He has a track record there. He has votes that are in the public record. We can go back and look at these things and verify the things that he says about himself. Julie Fedorchak, has been in public office for years now, serving on the Public Service Commission. She's got a public record. We can go back and we can look at, the decisions that she's made. What we have from you is what you've told us about your military record. So, I mean, do you have like your discharge papers? Do you have photos? Do you have other documentation you could show us? I guess sort of stand up this part of your resume.
Yeah, that's great. I was actually talking to General Haugen about this. The former National Guard commander from North Dakota. Just the other day, he asked me the same question, and I thought about it. It really makes a lot of sense. People we should ask that question, and I probably should have showed it from day one. So yes, I have all the DD-214s and all the rest of the paperwork. In fact, this weekend I'll be talking with General Haugen and just bringing them down there. Although we've talked for hours on the phone already. So
could you send them to me? I mean, I guess as a reporter, I'd be interested in seeing them.
Yeah, I talked to the guys handling it, and I want to be really straightforward. You guys need to get those, but I got to figure out how to handle it because they're very sensitive documents. And I guess in this day and age, if they get out there, people kind of manipulate it and put them back out. So maybe we work together to figure out how to do that, Rob. I don't know exactly how to do it right to make sure I get the information to you and still protect the documents. So I'm done talking to Sandy about that too, Sandy Sanford. So I know she needs to see a copy of them. So.
Alex, you're running for federal office, so if you'd be elected, you'd be North Dakota's lone voice in the U.S. House. So we got to ask you some federal policy questions, of which there are, of course, many. But last week, or maybe this week, it doesn't matter. Donald Trump came out and said that he was not, from what I could tell, that he wasn't in favor of a national abortion ban, but he wanted to leave it up to the states. There are those in the pro-life movement that do not think that is kind of the guarantee of the promise of the pro-life movement, because that still leaves states to decide when abortion could be legal or how many weeks along a pregnancy. Do you have a side, or have you thought about your stance on the issue if a federal abortion ban period came across your desk, if a 15-week ban? What is your stance on that issue?
So I'm obviously pro-life, and the answer to me this other night, the answer is no on a federal abortion ban. I think if you're asking federal government to be more limited and to step out, the last thing you do is to ask them to step back in and overrule the Supreme Court when they pass it down to the states, which is really the most constitutional thing to do. Now, where do we go on 15 weeks or 6 weeks? I mean, I'm a conception to death kind of person. And I looked at what the North Dakota law says about that. And I'm in agreement with what the North Dakota law says about that. But there are people, and we need to have this conversation, that need more teeth in the law. And I think I understand what they want. They want to stop this. Okay. And they want to do it by any means necessary. But there's a couple things that I think as Republican conservatives need to do if we're going to really talk about this, not a 30-second soundbite. And that is, what are we doing so that there's another choice for women that need that choice? Are we supporting this foster care? Are we supporting the adoption? Are we supporting them as much as we can? Because we're willing to put all the time and effort into punishment, and we're all the time and effort into corporations and other people that provide abortions. And what are we doing for people that say, hey, I just really need help to carry this baby? And I really think we need to have that conversation.
Does that include government subsidies for those programs, like foster care programs and child tax credits, things like that?
I think that's a state issue. But if you ask me do I think that we could take some reduce some federal tax dollars and give it back to people? Yeah, that's an easy one. I don't think we're going to make or break the U.S. budget on giving a mom a tax credit.
Alex, let's switch to foreign policy a little bit. The question of Ukraine has convulsed the House Republican caucus right now to the point where it seems very hard for them to get any business done. We may see another battle over who is going to be speaker, essentially the leader of the House Republican caucus, the one that you're campaigning to join. So, I mean, if you were elected and you're in Washington, D.C., how do you feel about funding for Ukraine?
So you've probably heard me say it before. It's America first. We've got to take care of the things in America. I'm not going to go through the whole list. You know what they are with the border and the rest of the stuff. Once we look at that, though, there's 4 and 8 issues that we need to do that support America's interests and make us a safer nation. So would I do Ukraine funding the way they're doing it? No, not at all. Would I look at supporting another force that is stopping communism and socialism if it meant helping Poland or helping other people train soldiers and sending in American weapons because they're better than somebody else's? Absolutely. But it doesn't cost $60 billion to start with, and it's much better run. There are government programs that are run exceedingly well. And the myth is that you're just throwing your dollars away. And that's not true, because the good heart federal workers are watching every single penny and they're making them count. Those special forces troops forward, training people and other things. Yeah, that stuff works. And American people need to know the truth about it.
So the situation with Ukraine is unfortunate. I mean, it's ongoing. And, however, saying America first and we've got to solve problems here first. I mean, that's fine, except that the Russians are in Ukraine now. And Ukraine needs bullets and money now. So you say, would I do Ukraine funding the way they're doing it now? No. Is there any way that you would fund Ukraine? I mean, how would if Alex Balazs was in charge of it, how would you fund Ukraine, if at all?
Yeah, that's simple. That's a one-day answer. I'm not saying you got to take everything and spend the money here first. You just say, I'm putting this money here in America. I'm taking care of our people. And then we're going to send those. And I mean, it is a longer discussion, but Robert, I'll just tell you, then you give those people the order that do this. We do foreign military training all the time. Go forth, train those guys, send them back in, get the weapons they need, and then we'll build the weapons back here and keep Americans employed, replacing those weapons. That's a 2-day.
Isn't that what we're doing? I mean, it seems like that's what we've been doing. Is Ukraine has been getting ammunition and things from our stores, and then we're essentially replenishing it by manufacturing new stuff for ourselves. I mean, I feel like that's already happening.
Yeah, but Robert, it's not accurate. So I'm not saying you're not accurate, but the whole story's not accurate. We're hamstringing people. We're getting in dribs and drabs. If you listen to the spokesman for the administration, they're counting out weapons and stuff. That's how you do it. You do it to win. You give it to the military to say with the other Forest Service guys that are over there at the embassies, and you make it work now. I can't emphasize enough that this administration has hamstrung the operation. They make it look good because they want to milk money. They're not running like a real mission.
So would you support a more fulsome support, like a more immediate support for Ukraine?
Yeah, sure. Why? Why are we delaying simple aircraft that another nation? Why did we delay the F-16? Another nation wanted to give them to them. They were ready to do it 2 years ago, and we stood on their necks. Come on. That doesn't make any sense at all.
Alex, let's go through, since you're running for federal office and get to vote on federal budgets, let's go through the classic FDR LBJ programs and see where you're at on them. Do you have any thoughts or philosophy on Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, as far as what Congress should be voting on for the next budget? I mean, we don't pass budgets anymore. We pass continuing resolutions, to my infinite frustration. But where would you like to see those programs go?
Well, I think we have to maintain Social Security as it is and stop touching it as a loan program for other government programs. I'll be honest, this Medicare thing about Medicare for everyone and all the rest of this stuff, this is a super big issue. And I would be remiss if I just told you that I have all the answers. But I see a lot of these programs that just get inflated and thrown around as ways to get votes, and that's not the way to do it. In fact, I just heard that the other day that even though I'm in TRICARE, being a vet, I have to sign up when I'm 65 for Medicare and pay a fee. I'm like, why? I have good care. Why would I burden that system further by using it? So I gotta get better on that and smarter on it. I can give you a better answer on it, but the Social Security system for sure needs to stand and it needs to be left alone.
Alex, you're going to be joining. I referenced this a little bit, with the Ukraine question, but I mean, it's a House Republican caucus that is, I think, could fairly be described as being in chaos. I mean, Democrats, whatever else you want to say about them, are pretty unified. I mean, they're pretty organized. Republicans, I think, are not. I mean, even to the point where we're down to a 2-vote majority in the House of Representatives. As a matter of fact, I was just thinking about this. The man that you're running to replace, Kelly Armstrong, if he's elected governor, he gets sworn in on December 15th, which leaves about a couple of week, maybe 2 or 3 week window, if I'm doing the dates in my head right, where we're down to 1 vote, essentially, in the House of Representatives, assuming nothing else happens. So you've seen people leaving early because of the dysfunction and everything. If you're elected, North Dakota has 1 member of Congress to send into this fray. Yep. How do we get back to we have a Republican caucus that's functional? How do you help that?
So I think we need to start here. You asked earlier a question about how are we going to get this divisiveness down here? And you're going to see for 2 months, we're going forward, we're going to pull this together. We're going to go to everybody and we're going to say, look, if you've got a decision to make to go to Washington, that should be, it should be a clear decision and come together on this. So I'm going to be asking people to come together. The same thing we're going to ask there. We're not going to compromise, but we're going to try to get this consensus right. But as the sole voice in North Dakota, I'm not going to give away my my sole vote cheaply and easily. They need to come together, and they also need an adult in the room sometimes to figure out what the mission is. This thing about this circular firing squad that they're running back there, attacking each other all the time. They need to understand who the enemy is, and the enemy's out there, and get on board with the fight.
One follow-up question to that: a lot of the dysfunction. One of the factions in the dysfunction, I should say, is the House Freedom Caucus. Now, I've heard your opponent, Rick Becker, say that he's going to join the House Freedom Caucus if he's elected. He is, and indeed the leader of that caucus, Representative Bob Good from Virginia, has endorsed him. He's also said that he's going to be a bull in a china closet. I guess to you, if you were invited to join the House Freedom Caucus, would you join it? And do you agree with that sentiment, going to Washington to be a bull in a china closet?
No. I think, look, if that's all you're going to do back there and you just want to stir things up, you're not getting the job done. It's cute, but it's not going to be where we need to be. And secondly, if the Freedom Caucus wants to join me, they can. So I'm a good leader. I don't need to join somebody else's caucus to get a louder voice back there. I think that that's a little bit of political mess. I think they're just tying themselves up in pretend. And I know a lot of those folks. Okay, so they can just get off that wagon that's taken us into more divisive areas and start doing business. It's one thing just to pretend you create a little party and you march around and get people to say we're that. How about just doing it? And then I'll measure what your merit says you did, like we're supposed to do in America.
Alex, a couple more federal program questions or federal budget questions. Would you try to be repealing Obamacare, aka the ACA, and would you look to reinstall the Trump tax cuts if Donald Trump got elected, or say he didn't, and would still push for that? Would those be two things you'd be advocating for? Or do you have thoughts on
Yeah, I'm advocating tax cuts all day long because we're not going to balance the budget by increasing tax cuts. We need to cut it and get less government up there. And the second piece about this Obamacare thing is that's built on a myth from years ago where somebody said we had to have national health care. That is not right. That putting federal government involved in medical care would be a lot like, me sending my lab into the legislature and pretending he's going to get the votes right every time. So
you would vote to repeal the ACA, though?
Yeah, I don't think it served it increased cost on everybody I talked to says it increased cost in healthcare. And by the way, when they were voting for that, there were clinics already available in cities where anybody could go and get taken care of. And they made such a myth of that. I just think it's a dysfunctional thing. We might need something to cover people. I don't want people left uncovered. This is America. We know how to do this stuff without the federal government writing a law.
Would you pass something separately then to ensure that folks who have what are considered pre-existing conditions could still qualify for insurance?
Sure, why not? Why would we?
Because it costs money.
Insurance companies,
the insurance companies is why.
Yeah, it costs the insurance companies, but they're giant. I mean, I don't think there's anything bigger than insurance companies. So sit down with the insurance companies who are American and say, let's figure out how to do this. You're telling me out of your gross profits every year, you're telling me that you're going to go broke covering existing conditions or pre-existing conditions. I don't think so.
Well, watch out now, because if you really want to take on the insurance companies, you're going down a Bernie Sanders path pretty quickly there, because he's got routes to do things without insurance companies.
I'm not taking them on. I'm saying let's get together as Americans. They know that we can do this better. I think a better approach than the Obamacare would have been to sit down with the national carriers, with the big people that do this, and say, why don't we work this out and figure out how to cover this stuff? And you telling me that the insurance companies, who are the brains in this, can't figure out how to take care of people because they do it every single day.
Alex,
and you think they would do that without a government mandate?
No, they could do it by working with government.
Alex, let's we were talking about spending and taxes a minute ago, and I think Republicans are really good talking about tax cuts, and I like that as a conservative. One thing I don't like as a conservative are budget deficits. And I think sometimes Republicans buy into this idea that every tax cut is going to pay for itself because it'll stimulate more economic activity and generate more revenue for the government. And so we can have lower taxes and more revenues. And I think sometimes that works, depending on the conditions, but it doesn't work every time. And so, I mean, my feeling is if we're going to cut taxes, then we've got to cut government. And I think the real problem is I don't know how many Americans are actually for that. I think in some ways, I think the politicians give Americans exactly what they want, which are low taxes and lots of government. And then we have massive budget deficits. So how do we square that circle and tell Americans, listen, if you want these government programs, then you're going to have to pay higher taxes. If you're willing to accept cuts to some of these government programs, then you can have lower taxes. I mean, is that the message you support? And how do you articulate that to voters?
Yeah, we've got to do what some other countries did around the world. They just went out to their people and they said, hey, it's going to hurt, but we're going to get back on track and we're going to have a balanced budget. And they made their countries better doing that. I have to say Israel did that, and it was painful for them, but they got on track. If you look historically, and here's the other thing you're asking, which is what I've been talking to people about: get the information to the people, to the voters. That's their job, right? To make the decision. So if we tell them, hey, if we don't do this, if we don't have extra money, or if we don't support Ukraine, here's what's going to happen. And then talk to them about it so they can go, okay, I'm fine with that end result. What's wrong with that? Why are we doing it in closed doors when we know that 22% of our fund or our budget right now is discretionary. Let's cut that. Let's see if we can get toward being balanced. And if we can't get there, we go to the people and say, hey, we're just not going to have enough here. But we don't, there's a lot of there's a lot of fluff to cut. Let's be honest, before we get to people going hungry.
Alex, you would be representing a state that is both ag and energy based in industry, commodity based. One of the biggest federal policies impacting that, of course, on the agricultural side is the Farm Bill. Where are you at with the reauthorization of that? Would you separate out the SNAP benefits from the ag subsidies for farmers directly? Do you still do you believe there's still a place for federal crop insurance? Where you're at?
Yeah. First of all, I still think there's definitely a place for properly administered federal crop insurance. I know farmers who've told me before, it's a thing that keeps these family farms, when they have 2 straight years of bad years, going. But every single one of them tells me, I'd rather pull a crop out of the field than get this insurance. It doesn't make us whole. It just gets us by. So I think that's important. Properly worked. I know I've heard all the discussions about it, how it's inflationary and stuff, but when I talk to the smart people, we can get more into this, but I've talked to people about this, and ag insurance, crop insurance is super important. And I think the federal government should subsidize it because it's so expensive. And we can go into that. However, going to the other question about the other part of that, sorry?
The SNAP benefits that are put in with the Farm Bill. The authors would say they need it there in order to get urban representatives to vote for it in the House. Now, but I don't know. What is your thoughts on that narrative? What do you think about the SNAP benefits being part of that Farm Bill program?
Yeah. So, on the 12 budget bills we're supposed to pass in the Congress, everything's, and 3 of them, they're really tied together. And ag is a great example of that. They got SNAP and WIC and everything tied in there. And I'm told you can't get your ag bill through unless you let the East and West Coast vote on your SNAP and WIC. In a perfect world, that belongs somewhere else in the budget, because it really, except for the fact that farmers produce the food that goes to WIC and SNAP, the reality is that it's probably not handled in the best way right now. And then you get to the question of, how do we get the ag bill through if we peel those out? And I've been told it's impossible. I don't know. If we were saying, does it work right now? Yeah, it's a big bill, but it still takes care of people. And I know people on WIC who really need it. So,
well, I'll tell you what, Alex, I appreciate it. You promised us 30 minutes. We got 30 minutes. We won't take up any more of your time today, but certainly looking forward to interviewing you again as time goes on. But welcome to the race, and thanks for coming on with us.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you very much, guys. I can't say enough thanks for that. And hey, next time, let's get to the hard stuff, okay?
I feel like we did a pretty good job.
We're going to talk actuarial tables and America's future in the world 50 years from now next time, Alex.
Yeah. Oh, no, wait a minute now. Now you got me, okay?
Thank you so much, Alex.
The cold cases you see at the Vault have captivated readers across our region for years. At the Vault podcast, our team of professional reporters takes you further into those stories with new interviews from family members, investigators, and experts. Check out The Vault at inforum.com/The Vault and subscribe to The Vault wherever you find your podcasts.
All right, welcome back. Just finished up with Alex Balazs, who I got to say, for an out-of-nowhere candidate, has a very well-organized campaign and can articulate himself very well. Now, during that interview, there were a couple of areas where I asked him, and I'm going to follow up on the military stuff with the DD-214 after we ended the interview. I talked to them for a couple of minutes about that. I'm going to work with his campaign about how to get that documentation. And just verified. I'm not saying he's lying at all. I'm just, like with any candidate, we need to look at it. But some of the stuff, when I asked him about Ukraine, I felt like that was one area where he started to get a little fuzzy. My takeaway from that, because he was talking about, like we haven't been effective in supporting Ukraine. Like we've been, but I think also I felt like he was hedging, because I think on one hand, I think he wants to say, yes, we need to support Ukraine. But on the other hand, also knows that has become a political football among Republicans. And maybe
it felt like he thought we were wasting money, but at the same time, we wanted to send in American military folks to address the situation. And maybe I'm getting the nuance.
No, I think he meant. I don't think he meant train American troops. I think he meant train Ukrainian troops
through American military,
right?
Folks that know that. But I mean,
his one point about like the fighter jets. the F-15s or whatever that I think, if I remember right, that like Poland wanted to give them, and it was going to be a deal where like Poland gave them what they have, and then we would give Poland new ones or something like that.
And I haven't followed that. I know it was F-16s that he was referencing, F-16. But I mean that doesn't change how he would be voting for that in particular. And I mean, without getting too far down the foreign policy weeds, I do always find it interesting that there are folks that really don't like that the Biden administration was the first administration in 4 presidents to withdraw us from an extended conflict in a country that, in my mind, did not appear to be going anywhere, Afghanistan. But now they really want us to take stronger stances here in 2 other occupied territories. And what is the test? What is the metric? I don't understand.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Vladimir Putin at this point is a bigger threat than I think some of it's like threats come and go.
And what's active and what's not. Sure.
What's active and what's not. I mean, I
think about that as a metric.
It was time it was time to get I think you could say that it was time to get out of Afghanistan while also saying our withdrawal was too precipitous. And we left a lot of people behind, we left a lot of equipment behind, and that wasn't good.
And that was his point,
I think that was his point.
It was an interesting interview too, in that, like you said, he's very articulate. I can't think of another person who came out of the blue on the political scene. I think it's fair to say he hasn't ran for an office before. I meant to ask him specifically if he had ever run for anything locally before, and I forgot to get around to it, but I'm pretty sure he hasn't. He certainly hasn't been in the state legislature like Rick Becker. He hasn't been on the Public Service Commission like Julie Fedorchak, 2 of his opponents in the primary. So that is very interesting. Interestingly, his main resume point is his time in the military, which is his Democratic opponent's main resume as well. Triggy Hammer has a long career, and I believe it's the United States Marines.
Right.
And it'd be very interesting having those 2 run against each other in general. But what I'm really wondering is, for the horse race, how the mechanics work. And I don't think the Republican Party has these bylaws in North Dakota, but correct me if I'm wrong. We just had Alex Balazs admit that he does not have a ton of money. He said, according to him, he has about 4 digits worth of campaign funds.
$2,035 is what he said. He said the rest is self-funded. Now, I don't know what's the scope of his personal wealth that he can self-fund. I mean, is he a millionaire? I don't know.
But if he is personally wealthy, that's different. Although then he's not portraying himself terribly honestly if he's just emphasizing the small dollar amount. But I don't know. That's all speculation. But we should get. And by the way, we should get a first peek in the next like 5. I mean, by April 15th is the deadline for the first quarterly. Right. So we should get something. Although his campaign is still pretty new. Rick Becker has said that his campaign raising is north of $800,000, and Julie Fedorchak is from a long line of political family with the Lifrigs. She's been on the Public Service Commission for at least 2 terms. Those are 6-year terms. She's got the
backing of people like Burgum and Hoeven, and I mean, she's going to.
Those are not slight political folks, so she could easily raise 6 digits. So now we're looking at least at 2 candidates. I would guess with Alex, 3 candidates who are going to be throwing 6, maybe 7 figures at each other for a June primary for a nomination, let alone Caramunda's in here now, and I've already forgotten her name again. I'm sorry, from Williston.
Charlotte Moore.
Charlotte Moore. This is going to be a real test of the Republican Party's infrastructure, though. When you endorse, what does that mean? Because if it doesn't mean financial backing on the June ballot in this race, it means nothing.
I think
nothing.
So I think sometimes Democrats, when I hear Democrats talk about this, I think you have to remember the Republican Party doesn't spend a lot on promoting, especially certainly not on ads and stuff. Where the Republican Party usually gets out is, they have a database of emails and stuff that the endorsed candidate is allowed to use, and then also they do some stuff on Get Out the Vote, which is generically serves all the Republican candidates, but specifically Get Out the Vote.
Typically in a general election, not in a primary.
In a general, you don't see it in a primary so much. It's really not a lot that any candidate would get from the party. It's really not. And the North Dakota Republican Party doesn't have a lot of money to give. The candidates themselves raise their own money. They have their own networks. And in the modern era where you could go out and buy data from data brokers, that are scraping it from social media and everywhere else.
Credit card companies and hotel companies, and everyone else under the sun.
Right. Even what the party has to offer for data is not that useful. So being the endorsed candidate gets you ballot access, and that's about it. I mean, it's the Republican Party support is not going to be a factor in this race. It is really not that much support. They don't have that much to give.
So at that point, what is the purpose of the Republican Party endorsement going into the primary?
Well, you could do a whole other podcast on that. I'm not.
It's getting more and more broken by the day. To this outside observer.
It's more a rhetorical thing. I mean, he got some headlines as the endorsed candidate. I mean, that was a good thing. He had a good weekend. He got to emerge, from basically out of left field. Suddenly he's the endorsed candidate. I think you could, and maybe even he would admit it was a little fluky, where you had, Becker was there and he can't, Becker was there and he can't, be on the stage, that he was telling people to spoil ballots. Yeah. He also, the really interesting thing is that Becker specifically asked people not to vote for Alex. And that earned a rebuke from Alex's campaign, where he accused Becker of being a party insider trying to grasp for power, which I thought was kind of funny.
Which both Alex and then especially Fedorchak seem to be a little bit sour about Rick running to win. And I'm wondering how that's going to look to folks on the outside saying, yeah, but he's trying to win a nomination. Why wouldn't he use every lever available to him? They don't care about convention bylaws.
Yeah.
Come on.
Well, I mean, but this is a Republican primary. And I mean, maybe I think, the people in the room.
If you're a Freedom Caucus member or a person that doesn't think the Republican Party is bold enough, and you think Rick Becker is,
sure,
why in the world do you care about?
Of course. If you're a Becker backer, then it's by any means necessary. Although, again, I would point to the fact that Becker specifically instructed his people not to vote for Alex, and they voted for Alex anyway. The people in that room are all going to go home to their districts. They're all very politically engaged people, which means they all probably influence less politically engaged people around them. I think Becker hurt himself there. I don't think it's a mortal wound, but I don't think he came out of that looking very good, especially when, he looks like a crybaby where, the party had this rule. It wasn't created for Rick Becker. It was created before anybody knew he was going to run for the United States Senate in 2022. He lost the convention endorsement in 2022 to John Hoeven. He then declined to put himself on the June primary ballot for Republican voters, and instead left the party and campaigned against the endorsed Republican candidate, endorsed and nominated on the June ballot Republican candidate, campaigned against him on the general ballot as an independent. To
get a distant third.
I think that does alienate him. Maybe not with a lot of voters, but with some voters. Sure.
That narrative makes perfect sense. In the Trump era, I can also see that narrative spun the exact opposite. In the corporate establishment,
what a maverick.
Last time, now they've put in a bunch of BS rules to keep real rebels out.
Sure. Anything
you want to cut the deficit.
Anything could be
the government smaller.
Sure. Anything could
even
be
more reason to back.
Sure. Yeah. Anything could be spun. Trump's now spinning the January 6 people as unbelievable patriots too. So, that's the world we're living in, unfortunately.
Sorry, my coffee maker peeped. If you heard that,
no, that's all right.
I apologize. So I saw that there's going to be at least one radio debate. I meant to look this up. I meant to ask Alex this, and shame on me for forgetting. We had a very intense interview, which was a good thing because he's kind of getting introduced to everybody.
Sure.
Back in the day, I know that on the Democrat side of the aisle, and I'm guessing on the Republican side, it's happened somewhere too. It was the first time George Sinner became governor. Former Governor Art Link and then two other Democratic legislators were all running for the nomination. And I want to say it wasn't a big primary ballot. I want to say it was leading up to the convention. But they famously rode around in a van together, going from district convention to district convention, all four candidates, and did like a little debate, did a little like horse and pony show for everybody. I'm wondering now. I don't think that Fedorchak and Becker and Alex are all.
I think you're kidding yourself if in this environment these candidates are going to ride around the state in a van together.
But they're not. Okay, I understand that is a little too quaint. Although, you know what?
I
I'm not going to apologize for hoping our politics was a little bit better.
No, I wish. I'm just saying.
But
you're fooling yourself.
Why wouldn't they? And I actually think like Sandy Sanford would be very smart to turn this into even a fundraiser if they'd accept it. Why not do 5 debates around the state? Why not do 6? Do Fargo, Grand Forks, Bismarck. Why not? Wilson, Dickinson. Why not?
Because, well, first of all, Rick Becker doesn't want any part of elevating Alex Balazs. He doesn't want any part of it. Alex Balazs is going to pull votes from him. I mean, you saw it.
Asked? I don't know if that's fair to say about him until he's been asked. He loved jumping in the fray. Okay. I don't know.
I am telling you, there is no. I mean, maybe.
He's doing the radio debate with him already.
I would be shocked. Well, he has to do some debates. I mean, the idea of touring the state with Alex Balazs, there's no way that Becker's going to go for that.
Maybe they're not in the same way. But like, there's 6 debates set up once a week or something. They invite the local Republicans. That just makes sense to me.
Yeah, but to you, who has no dog in this race at all, who's a Democrat.
I don't know. I'm pretty sure Sandy Sanford's taking points from said on Rob Port's podcast.
You think so? They listen. They listen very closely. Listen, I mean, in the same reason that I think Cara Mund, and by the way, we were able to verify it is Cara. I'm sorry that I've been pronouncing it like an idiot.
Yeah, Bob.
It's Cara. Cara Mund, who is booked on the show next week on Wednesday.
Excellent.
I think that she's a threat to pull votes away from Fedorchak. I also think that this Charlotte Moore, when you look at the people who signed the petition to put her on the ballot, I think that was the Becker crew trying to play some 4D chess, and they're thinking, well, if we put another female name on the ballot, that'll pull votes from Julie. I don't know why else they would put that candidate on the ballot, but whatever.
Can we talk a little bit about, well, 2 things. One, in order for anybody to appear on the November ballot, that means legislators, statewide elected officials, you need to get enough votes from your own party to cross a threshold. Now, it is a very minor threshold, but speaking of someone with personal experience of the Burgum 2016 primary, I think this busy of a Republican primary is a real threat to Democratic legislative candidates to not even get the votes they need to be. They're endorsed. Yeah. They're running in their primary. They may not get onto the November ballot.
Well, I was thinking about that. So are you're thinking that Cara Mund is the big draw for Democrats to cross the aisle?
I was already worried that Democrats wouldn't have any reason to vote in their own primary, so they'd say, well, maybe I'll vote for Julie.
Well, they do now. I mean,
now they have someone who's explicitly, in my brain, explicitly pro-choice running on the Republican side. So there's a strategic thought, hey, if you're a Democratic voter, I want a pro-choice candidate. Why not just vote for Cara there and Trigby in November?
Okay, not just explicitly pro-choice, though, but explicitly pro-choice is promoted by a left-wing talk radio host endlessly. It has held, last cycle held fundraisers with prominent Democrats like Representative Carla Rose Hansen, former Democratic Party chair Tom Dixon. I mean, she's in many ways endorsed by Democrats. Now, the one thing I'm wondering about how many people are going to cross over, because on one hand, it's one thing for them to vote for an independent in the general. It's another thing for them to cross over. Remember, the last time they crossed over was in 2016 for Burgum. And I'm wondering I'm remembering how many Democrats are feeling burned by that, because look at Burgum now.
And even then, when you're saying Burgum was a relatively new political entity, but he'd been known around Fargo for a long time, you could say he could kind of govern how he wants to as governor. Now, I think he wound up being very conservative by those voters.
He definitely ended
Cara
up.
is running to join Mike Johnson's House Republican caucus, and there's no other way it's licensed.
I think that makes it tougher for Democrats to cross over this time. There's also lingering resentment, I think, among some Democrats that last time, they had an endorsed candidate and that candidate was pushed out of the race in favor of Mund. There's still some hard feelings about that. And I don't think, not that obviously Mund's taking a different route this time, but Trigby Hammer, I don't think would stand for that. I mean, if somebody tried to push him out of the race, he's not going anywhere.
I want to know what Republican is looking at, like someone who would consistently vote Republican is looking at Cara Mund as their option. I don't know who that profile is. I did want to touch on one other thing too. Have you invited Roland Reimers onto the show? Is he going to make an appearance here? Okay. I wanted to say,
Roland Reimers, I feel like, is a known entity at this time. Like, he's run over and over and over again. I'm
beyond frustrated with the man, because my understanding of him is he would consider himself to be very conservative, and he hasn't gotten the Republican nomination. He's ran as a libertarian multiple times. He does not believe, to my knowledge, in government programs, government subsidies. He does not believe in most Democratic Party platforms. Democrat. I'm guessing he would have voted, he'd be in favor of privatizing Social Security. So it is beyond disingenuous to me to run for the Democratic nomination for Congress. Yeah. That is a really bad faith candidacy. It really bothers me.
Honestly,
maybe I'm wrong, and he can come on. If I'm wrong, I hope he comes on and tells me.
Well, I mean, that's why I struggled so much with Munn's candidacy last time. It's like, she's running and she's like, I'm a Republican, but I'm like Joel Heitkamp's favorite Republican, and Carla Rose Hansen is raising a bunch of money for me. I mean, that
she gave
to
a
me,
few examples of where she agreed with Republicans, at least. I'm not saying your points don't stand. I mean, Josh Reimers, I don't believe, agrees with Democrats on anything.
Josh Moshe could also list several things that he agrees with Republicans on. So I don't. Yeah. I mean, listen,
you're not wrong.
It's disingenuous, and I mean, that's something it's very hard for me to get over. I don't say that. I don't say that with enmity towards Cara Mund. I mean, I think she's trying to do what she's going to do, but to me, that's just a fundamental disconnect in her approach to politics, and it's a tough thing to get over as a conservative voter. But I am interested.
Come on the show, though, and you're going to ask her those things, so we're going to find out.
Her path to victory, I think, lays with if she can get enough Democrats to cross over. If she doesn't get Democrats to cross over, then I don't see how she wins as a pro-choice candidate in a Republican primary.
Most interesting primary we've had in a long time.
I also have no idea how to handicap that race. It's going to be a tough one, but we got to go. Ben, thank you so much for sitting in today. On Friday, I was trying to get James Bartlett. I can't get James Bartlett, the superintendent candidate, to come on the show. Every time I write, he says he doesn't have time for interviews. I watch him doing interviews with others. I think he just doesn't want to come and take questions from us, because on this show, I think we ask tough questions on this show, as Alex acknowledged. Sometimes candidates don't like to take tough questions, but
when I was telling Alex, I kind of put him through the firing squad of questions, but he took them well, and he's running for federal office. These are issues he's going to vote on. So.
Exactly. All right, Ben, thanks for your time. Thanks for listening. We'll talk again. Did you know Forum Communications Company has a robust podcast library? At inforum.com/podcast. We have everything from politics, sports, true crime, outdoor adventure, and more. Visit inforum.com/podcast and explore them all today.